Everyone, welcome to the Way of Champions podcast this week. This is John, and I am super excited to be here with you and Jerry and a dear, dear friend this week, Meredith Civico. I've had the honor of working with Meredith, who is the head field hockey coach at Rutgers University, for the last 7 seasons or so. We started together in 2018, and it's been an amazing journey of learning and joy for me. And hopefully for Meredith and her amazing teams. In our time together, well, let me just tell you a little bit about Meredith. Coming up this fall will be her 14th season at Rutgers Field Hockey. She's won 135 games at the time. 9 wins or more in 10 seasons. And since we've been together, three NCAA tournament bids. And in 2021, our team won the Big Ten women's field hockey title. We became the first program at Rutgers University, male or female, to win a Big Ten title. So that was super exciting. We reached number one in the country that year in the RPI. We've been top 10, top five many other years, and it's just been a wonderful journey. Meredith, going back to 2004, the Scarlet Knights have 45 ranked wins, but 42 of them against top 20 teams have come in these past 7 seasons. 40 and including 3 wins in 2024 over top 10 teams. Now, Meredith also, as a player, played at the University of Maryland for 1 year at Boston University, 3 years at Maryland, won the 2005 NCAA title there as a player. She was a 4 year indoor U.S. national team player as well, and coach in the Team USA Youth Development National Team program as well. So she's just an amazing coach, an amazing human being, and it's been such an honor to work with her. And so the goal today is to unpack our work together and let you listeners sort of understand some of the things that we do, but most importantly, that her and her coaching staff do to create this incredible culture and super high standards at Rutgers, and how long she's been associated with this from her time as a player at Maryland and first getting to meet Jerry and getting marinated, as he would say, in the way of champions. Okay. So this is going to be a really interesting talk because it's the first time I'm bringing on one of the coaches that I've worked with over the last number of years to talk about the work that we do. Okay. Now, before we jump in, I just want to give a shout out to our Patreon podcast champions, those incredible supporters who are now going to soon become members of our whole back end, have access to everything that we've ever created at Changing the Game Project. So if you want to become a supporter of the podcast, make a small donation every month, go to patreon.com/Way of Champions. And then, of course, our friends at Sprocket Sports. As good as a coach as Meredith Civico is, I think Sprocket Sports is that super, super high level of software program for your beautiful website and front end, incredible registration system, scheduling, team communication, all that sort of stuff. The best I ever worked with. I know they've been a longtime supporter of this podcast, but before that, was a client. So anyway, check them out, sprocketsports.com/CTG, or set up a meeting and let them know that you heard about them on the Way Champions. All right. But for now, get ready, get set. It's Meredith Civico, Rutgers Field Hockey. How do you build a championship culture? Enjoy, everyone. Meredith, welcome to the Way Champions. Jerry and I are so excited. We just been chatting away and we almost forgot to hit record, so we figure we better get this started.
No, I'm so happy to be here and just really excited, to come on here and catch up with you both. And I was saying to Jerry, this feels so full circle. Um, so I'm just excited to catch up and see where our journeys have taken us.
We'll start there. Maybe Jerry, you just take that first question, like what your memory of of working with Meredith as an athlete at University of Maryland.
Yeah, we started talking about that before we recorded, and I was telling Meredith how she does not look any different than she did back when she was a student at the University of Maryland. And if I recall correctly, we won a championship together, didn't we?
We did. We
Right? So I think that, yeah, 1999, if I recall. I don't forget the dates on championships. But
2005.
anyway, so
2005, you forgot that one.
oh, 2005. Yeah, of course. What am I talking about? I forgot it. So what was it? You were first introduced to Way of Champions with me at Maryland, and then you get reintroduced to Way of Champions with John at Rutgers. And tell us a little bit about the experience of winning a national championship with Way of Champions philosophy. I know you were a philosophy major, and therefore you got into coaching, and then all of a sudden you decided to bring the walk experience to Rutgers. So that's quite a journey right there.
It was,
Tell us more about that.
it is quite a journey and quite a long journey. And, I was really fortunate to end up at the University of Maryland. I transferred there actually. So I started out at Boston University and, it wasn't the right fit for me in many ways, and that transfer process was challenging and was scary. And, I ended up at Maryland. Um, and I really wanted to be in a program that was competitive, that felt like a family. I had a great high school coach, Trish Lefevre at Ocean City High School in New Jersey, and we won state championships, consistently. And I don't think I lost maybe one game in high school. It wasn't really who I was, and that was important, but also the culture and the family, and that was a big reason that I went to Maryland from Boston. And uh, Missy is a special coach, and I think she's been a mentor of mine, throughout my playing and coaching career. And I was ready for something fresh. I was ready for something new. I had kind of gone through this process and it was challenging as a student athlete and as a person. And, I remember one of the first meetings in the spring we had, Jerry came in and we were in this conference room upstairs in the Comcast Center. And, Jerry just had this energy and this enthusiasm and this passion. And I just felt, in that moment, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. Like I, I feel like this is what I'm looking for, that I can relate to this. I'm inspired. And, you know, Way of Champions and Jerry became a really important piece in our program and our culture and the way we did things and how we acted. We talked a lot about acting like a champion, in everything we did, whether it was on the field, competing and training, in the classroom, in the community. So that became something that really impacted me during my time at Maryland, and I think Jerry was also working with the women's lacrosse team, and they've Acacia Walker, who was playing lacrosse, and now she's at Boston College, just being amazing. So it's really cool to see, other athletes, and other coaches that were impacted by the work of Way of Champions and how they're translating that into their program. So when I came to Rutgers, it was a program that wasn't competing. It was a program where the players weren't excited to come every day. But it was a program that I believed in. I'm from New Jersey, it's my home state. My parents grew up down the street, actually, in East Brunswick and Old Bridge. So 5 minutes from the campus. My dad went to Rutgers. He went to Rutgers Law School. So it was special to me and I knew I could be successful. So I think when I started early days, I really thought about creating that environment, that we did that work with Jerry at Maryland, where players want to come. It's exciting, it's fun. You want to come be a part of it every day. And if I could create that first, I knew I could build something that would be sustainable and that would be competitive. And then the next thing we did was just compete, compete, compete. Like our hair is on fire, and that's something Jerry would always say to us. And whatever it was at Rutgers, we were going to win it, whether it was community service award, highest GPA, the dance marathon, which is it's not really about winning. It was about, raising awareness and money, but they had a dance competition for the athletics teams and field hockey was going to win, pizza eating contests with the student athletes in action. We were going to win, and I think that's something that we really did with you, Jerry, is just whatever it is, let's compete, compete, win the day. And then we were so fortunate, we kind of built that base. And then, Jerry, you connected us with John, and John and I, we just missed each other at the University of Vermont, which was, I know, a special place for both of us.
Mhm.
It's where I got my coaching start. And, I think that is a special connection. And we love Burlington. And we were both super pumped about, them winning the national championship this year. What a great story.
Yeah.
Um, and then we were able to really bring John into our program, and he's helped us build this culture and, this sense of family. And uh, everything we do is guided by our core values and family and love and trust and, respect, compete, hard work. Those are really the foundations of what we do. So I feel really fortunate, to kind of be in this position and get to work with John and really we've built something that we're really proud of, really
Yeah.
proud of.
I mean,
Yeah.
Mayor, it's been obviously a great honor to work with you. And I remember the first team I worked with was former Maryland lacrosse player Karen Henning at Colby, and then Jerry introduced me to you, and I, was so excited. And for me, it was nice because I think I asked you the first time we talked on the phone, like, what is it? And you're just like, I know I felt a certain way as a player when we worked with Jerry. I want my players to feel that way, right? I want to feel that way, the way we compete, the way we conduct ourselves, the standards that we aspire to, but also just the mindfulness and the visualization and all these other things, all the interference that can happen off the field so it doesn't carry on to the field. And so it's been so fun. And I remember my first visit, you said like your first couple years, you were like 9-9, 9-9. You're like bouncing around there, and you're like, we just need that extra percentage to get over the top. And I remember you said, I think we finally have the players in the locker room who are ready for this. Like in the beginning, you were like, they're not all ready to compete. They're not all ready to that. So maybe talk about what made you feel like, okay, I got the right people on the bus. Now let's, map a slightly different course.
It was definitely a process building this program and recruiting to it. And it took a while, and it took a while to get, I mean, Rutgers was, you know, it was a program that hadn't really had success in a long time. So we had to recruit really a special type of athlete, the ones that wanted to be a part of something, who weren't afraid of hard work, who wanted um, to make and write their own history, so that took a little while. And I
And,
think,
and let me just interrupt and say, and you just joined the Big Ten, which
yes,
let's say
yeah,
the best field
that's it.
hockey conference in the country, where every
Incredible.
game is a war.
Bar none.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And we joined the
Yeah.
same as Maryland too, which was, my alma mater. So now I'm conference rivals with, my former head coach, and absolutely the best,
Wow.
most
Yeah.
competitive field hockey
Yeah.
conference in the country.
Yeah.
So it was, and it was really fun, recruiting. And I think we knew we had something special. And we had a couple really amazing New Jersey natives, and, players like Gianna Glatz and Gianna Mancini and Cassidy Shetler, and, players that grew up around Rutgers and who were really invested in our program. And, we had some amazing international players that joined us as well, and Carrie Burns, and that group. We also had COVID, which was so interesting. So
It
kind of
wasn't
built,
interesting.
we built this team, and I think it was 2018, and we had, some players, Alana Galato from Eastern High School, Nikki Santor. So that year, that 2018 was that year where we had those players. You came in, John, and I think we really got to work and we got deep into what do we want to achieve. We started talking about, big dreams and big goals, and really believing that we were capable of achieving those, and I think creating that belief and creating that trust, and that if we all commit to this and we all do whatever it takes for each other, like we can really achieve something special, and I think
Mm.
that kind of built from that 2018 team where we made the NCAA tournament for the first time in like since the 80s. And I'll just never forget the celebration in that room and, the feeling and, um,
I
you know,
remember watching it on Twitter and
yeah,
almost crashing my car because I was
yeah,
driving
yeah,
and I was watching the selection show and I was
yeah.
like I remember I finally pulled over and my wife's like, I'm driving. You're not even paying attention to the road anymore. And we were the last team to get in,
Announced.
right? And we knew
Yeah,
we had a chance, but we
yeah.
were the last team on the selection
Wow.
show.
Like, yeah, we were the last team on the slide, like to be announced, and we were all just holding our breath, like, is it us? And we had a great resume and a great RPI, and we had everything, but it
Mhm.
was, so it was really incredible, and to have that experience, as an athlete, I played in three Final Fours and
Mhm.
competing in an ACC championship. So I had, that experience as an athlete was incredible, going to those games and playing in the NCAAs and dancing in November. It's just a whole nother, piece of the experience. So I was so excited for these guys to be able to have that opportunity because they deserved it,
Yeah.
and it was really special. And we went and we learned a lot and, we kind of came back and we had a really good team, coming in and 2020 as well. And then COVID happened,
Yeah.
which was it was disappointing, but I think during that time, I mean, we did so many Zooms, John, like you with the team,
We
and
did.
we read, books together and we had amazing conversations. And I think it really allowed us to get even deeper,
We
and
also did a talent show. I believe you
we
played
did.
guitar for us all.
I I did. I was learning the ukulele, so we
Yeah.
all kind
Oh,
of,
ukulele.
yeah.
You know, what was funny was Jerry, we were like, we did, we did all these Zooms and then we also did like the anti-talent show from our friend Trevor Reagan. And so we all tried, I learned to juggle, right? And we all tried to do it. And then one of the team captains, like, I tried to learn a split. And we're like, no, no, don't pull your hamstring.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. But it's interesting because that time, I remember we our first Zoom, right? We sat down as a group and what we talked about was we've elevated this program to a top 10 to 20 team, right? We've taken this one step, but we're still not there with the Northwesterns or the North Carolinas or the Marylands yet. We hadn't beat any of those teams where, we're like, what are we going to do now? And and we talk, Jerry, this term that Jerry introduced to me, which was investment season, right? Like, is this going to be the off season or is this going to be the investment season? While other teams aren't practicing, are we going to figure out a way to close the gap so that when we play again, we are now at that level? And that's what was so special about that group was that when we played again, all of a sudden, you know, we were the Big Ten champions.
It was incredible. It was incredible. And the team really bought into that. They really wanted to achieve something. And I think we had a really special group of team leaders, during that time. And um, it just was incredible. It was incredible. And it just shows you if you commit and you work hard and
Yeah.
you're willing to do what it takes and you trust the process,
Yeah.
because during COVID, none of us knew we didn't know. Would it ever go back to normal? Would we ever compete? What would it be? What would it be like when we returned? And we took it day by day and we just said, trust the process. Let's invest. It's gonna pay off. And let's enjoy this time that we have together where we can really focus on each other. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that uh, uh, I'm thinking right now is a lot of coaches are listening to this who are listening to the conversation. Uh, they buy into the off season, and the athletes buy into the off season, and it's almost like they look forward to it. So it become what happened in your culture with John was you guys put your heads together and you decided, you know what? How about a an investment season or developmental season? You can call it whatever you want, but what it is, it's a buy-in, and that's the buy-in that you need, right? That's what you're asking is you're not demanding yet, but you're asking the kids to buy in to being a better version of themselves by putting more work in. And that became real apparent to me early on because all these coaches and teams that I would see were telling me how they look forward to the off season. And I'm thinking, that means you're off. That means you're dropping. If I stop working out right now and I don't go to the gym, my fitness level starts to go down, down, down. And why? Because I'm being off. And so I could stay on by dropping it just a little bit and then maintaining that level. And when I thought about that concept and passed it on, I haven't met a team that hasn't embraced that. And why wouldn't you? So for the coaches listening, you might want to think about that idea and let's pass that on. And I'm so happy, John, that you brought that. That was a brilliant move on your part, and you had the right environment and the right people to buy into it.
and we really embrace that. Right now we're in our spring season and it's absolutely investment season. And I think as a coach as well, it's nice in the fall and in your main season, it's so focused and it's so much prep, getting your team ready game to game. But I think in this investment season, you're able to spend time, you're able to build connections, you're able to really, get to know all the athletes on your team. And I really enjoy that as a coach. I really think that spring season, and we've really taken that, like, this is the investment season. Everything that we're doing is going to impact our performance in the fall. And I think that's something we've really carried on. And that's how we look at our non-competition season, is just really the investment season.
I think one of the things that we were blessed with in that group was three amazing captains in Gianna Glatz, who's an All-American, and Katie Larimore, who I think was an All-American, and Carrie Burns, who all region, all Big Ten, like amazing captains. And COVID also brought this thing of togetherness, right? We were in a bubble. We were, and the discipline that the team showed, but that they showed as leaders. I think there was a point where we were the only team without anyone who got sick on the whole campus, right? Like everyone was really disciplined about investing and staying well and following the thing. And I just knew like again, those are like the little details that has nothing to do with field hockey that knows that everyone's taking care of business. And I remember that as such an important thing. And then those three and the other seniors and top players on that team who were just amazing, right? Did so much amazing work. But I also remember like leadership is hard. And I would have conversations with them and they were exhausted just managing it and trying to stay on top of it and keep focused on this goal of not just, hey, we're happy to get to the NCAAs, but we want to win it all and we want to win a Big Ten and so I mean maybe talk about that because like we were very blessed with incredible captains in that group during the most challenging time probably any college athletes have ever faced.
Mhm. And yeah, they were incredible. We had a very special relationship, I think, coach and athlete, and we had this trust. They could come to me with anything. They really felt like whatever it was, and I think it was also the circumstances almost like warranted that. Like I needed to know if somebody was in trouble or at risk or putting the team in a situation, and whatever happened, they felt like they could come to me and we were going to deal with it together, and it was about keeping them safe. I mean, that was my priority as a head coach during that time. Like, first and foremost was I am now responsible for 22 young people, and I have to keep them safe and keep them healthy. And that's my number one priority, and keeping myself and my family and my staff safe and healthy. So it's interesting because almost those circumstances created that environment where they trusted that my number one priority was their health, their well-being. It wasn't about winning, it wasn't about performing or playing hockey. It was, I cared about them as people, and I think that almost kind of set the stage for, okay, we know they call me Mayor, which is, they call me, we know Mare is gonna take care of us. We know she genuinely has our best interests at heart. And it created this just bond where then when we went back to compete, they knew I would do anything for them and they would do anything for me. And that is probably the most powerful thing that I've ever come across as a coach. I loved my team unconditionally, wholeheartedly, and they knew that and they loved me back, and whatever I asked them to do, they were going to do it because they knew how much I cared about them. And I think that those leaders, they just took the team with them and said, trust us, trust our coaches, you know, we can do this together, if we all are committed to it and we all take care of each other. And I think that was something that was so special. And I think, as a coach now, that those circumstances created that, but I'm always thinking, like, how do I connect? How do I create this? How do I show them how much I care and how much they matter to me? Because I know if they feel that way, I can push them and challenge them, and they are going to feel safe and they're going to feel supported, and we're going to be successful.
I know Jerry's going to want to
Yes.
ask a follow-up on that one.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but my next book almost completed, thanks to John, who's given me some really good assisting, is called Dare to Love. And I'm listening to you, and I might have to get those quotes put in that book because regardless of whether you've won a national championship or no championships, you're demonstrating and you're emblematic of what all the great coaches are all about. And it's all about love. And when athletes feel that love, and it's a feeling, right? It's an action word, it's a verb, and they feel it. Uh, they'll run through a wall for you. But you're doing things. You mentioned some things, and I don't want to bypass those. You mentioned some things specifically that you were doing during COVID that enabled them to feel that love, which in turn says, you know what? This coach can ask anything of me. She can demand me to bite the grass to make it shorter if that's what it's going to take because of that connection. And that's how important that is. And that's why I'm writing this book because it's such a universal concept. Not with every coach. It's a special coach that does that. And you're very special because of that. And the kids feel it and it comes back to you. And this is emotional for me. I can feel it. And
Mm.
and so you know what you're doing. And can you go back and just sort of just mention some of those other things that brought about that love that you did so other
Yeah.
coaches can maybe learn from that?
Yeah, and I have your Coaching with Love book on my shelf too, Jerry. So, and that's something that was really ingrained in me as an athlete. I think treating people, in there's so many things that happen as a coach, and it's not just about sports. And these young people come to you with all kinds of things, and and challenges. And I treat them exactly how I'd want someone to treat me in that situation, with care and with love and with understanding, and listen first, and I think that's always been, it's also how I was raised. My parents were like that. There's 4 kids in my family, and that's how my mom and dad raised us. And You know, it's sports are played by people, and people are the most important, and I think
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
always been something that's been ingrained in me as a human being, and
Yeah.
into my coaching.
Yeah.
And I absolutely like love it's everything, everything. If we had more love and more compassion, a lot of things would be better, and we could achieve so much more, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
Like
Now
Jimmy,
we're getting philosophical, Jerry, because
well, no, no, no. I want to go down this hole
yeah.
with you, it's a beautiful hole filled with light and joy. And I think of the words of the great late Jimi Hendrix, guitarist from my generation, and you probably are familiar with him too, who said, and I'm going to misquote him, I'm sure, but I'll paraphrase it. Basically, he was saying that when the power of love overtakes the love of power, we'll all be better off because of it. It'll be a better world. And so you understand that. And you and John did this dance together of creating some of that. And you were the beauty of you as a coach is how wide open you are to understanding. You were very lucky and fortunate because coaches are out there saying, "Yeah, but I wasn't raised with a family like that, and that's not me." I'm here to say, look, everything that you're talking about, if you you learned it from your parents. So if I didn't learn it from my parents, which I didn't, and I talk about that in my new book about what a dysfunctional environment. But I made a decision, and that decision was the buck stops here, and I'm going to create a family where there's a lot of love and a lot of connection and caring and empowerment. And then what I did was I brought that to the teams that I work with because I saw you as one of my children. I saw you, the whole team, as my kids, and I wanted to bring love.
Mhm.
And if you didn't feel that love, I wasn't doing my job. And so the positive thing for coaches listening to this is these are things that we can learn. We could learn how to be empathic. We could learn. You mentioned the word listen. Betsy Butterick is going to show up today in your environment. And for those who don't know her, she researches all of these wonderful ways to communicate with people, and one of them is listening, the power of listening. You're a good listener, and 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 you can coaches listen. We all can learn how to be better listeners. And what happens when you're listened to? You feel important, valued, and empowered. When you feel valued, important, and empowered, what are you going to do on the field? Oh my God, I'll do anything when I feel that way. So those are some of the key ingredients. I'm just talking because I want coaches to remember that this is something that is learned. That's why John and I write the books we do because we're trying to teach these things. And it's so amazing to watch you from where I began meeting when I first met you that you've created this and it's amazing stuff.
But before you answer, Meredith, I remember asking you a couple years ago, um, the environment of college sports is getting harder and harder, and there's a youth sports system that breeds entitlement and selfishness, and it makes it hard when you're trying to do this. And I said, how do you do this? How do you deal with this? And you just said, you know what? I try to treat every single kid like they're my own daughter. You know what? And
Ah,
when it's your own child, everything's not yes, do whatever you want. You have to say no. You have to tell them difficult things. You have to instill discipline. You have to be demanding if you're going to be a good parent. So now you can now go ahead, but I wanted to throw that in because that has always stuck with me of like, coach like you would treat your own child, because that's really, and that doesn't mean that it's that everything's just complacency and a free for all.
No,
yeah, let me just jump in for a second.
Uh-oh,
Hold
we're
your
not letting
thought.
Meredith
Press
talk.
pause. No, no,
I
no,
love this
pause.
full conversation.
Pause it, pause it. No, here's the thing. What John's saying is absolutely true. Again, I don't want coaches to miss this idea because when we talk about love and caring, they're afraid they can't ask for something. And actually, what we all need to remember is the act of demanding is an act of love. Why? I'm going to demand from you, Meredith, when I was at Maryland, I'm going to demand from you a lot because I know you can do it and I
Mhm.
believe in you and that's love. And I want to see you be the best. Okay, I'm done.
Absolutely. And I think that's um, you know, with regard to like treating the player, it's so amazing. Like these young women, they want to be so great. There's never a player that comes into my program who doesn't want to be great, and sometimes when they're young, they struggle to communicate that. And part of, that approach of like I treat them like my own is just I'm tasked and it's my responsibility to help them grow, and when they come in and they're 18 and they're young and they're not used to maybe having conversations face to face with adults and being held accountable and all those things. And I have three young children, and I think becoming a parent has really transformed my coaching as well. Um, my love for my children and my players, it's unconditional because one, I know their intentions coming in here. They want to be great. They want to learn. They want to be pushed. Sometimes they don't always know how to communicate that, with a coach or with an adult, besides their parents. So that's my job to develop, to mold, to communicate, to get to know them, to get to understand them, what makes them tick, what motivates them. Every player is different, and I enjoy that part of coaching, getting to know the players and how do they respond. Because when you can figure that out and you find how that player responds and you get that response and it's so wonderful and you see them perform and become, like you said, the player they can be. That's everything. That's why I do what I do, and I think um, it's under having no ego, that's part of it. Like it's not about me. It's about them. It's about getting the best out of them because if I'm able to do that as a coach, my program will be successful. Players will want to be a part of it. If I do all those little things well and I take care of my athletes and I hold them accountable and I'm honest with them and they trust me, I can be tough and I can develop them, I can push them, I can get the best out of them.
Mm.
And then we'll be successful.
Mara, I think one of the things that, it's hard for people to understand sometimes is, winning a championship at your level is hard. Competing for a national championship, it's really hard. And a lot of programs like, the players feel like, okay, we're getting along, we have good relationships. If we really start to compete and it gets really cutthroat, um, we won't like each other anymore. So they're afraid to take that jump to the next level. But what they don't quite understand because they haven't been there yet, and I think what we've been able to create, what you've been able to build at Rutgers with, amazing with Ajay and Phil and Joey and everything, and Maddie before that as assistants is like where you do both, where
Mhm.
you're not afraid to compete every single day, and there is this respect and this culture, and you can see it in things. And another one of my fondest memories is we had a player, I remember Liz Romano transferred in, and we were on a team Zoom. I think it was the spring or whatever, and I hadn't met her yet in person. And she spoke up on this Zoom and said, when I was looking to transfer, I wanted to be in this part of this culture where it was super competitive, yet also people just, loved each other. And she goes, I was watching like the videos of Rutgers, post game, the celebrations, all this, watching on video, and I called my parents and said, "That's where I want to go. That's what I want for my experience." And then she said on that Zoom, which I'll always remember, she said, "And since I've been here, it's even better than I thought it was." And
Oh,
that's one of
man.
my proudest moments.
Yeah.
Whoa. This is too much love for me. I can't
Oh,
handle this. No, that's amazing, John. That story, you've never told me that story. That
Yeah.
is really, that says it all right
Mayor,
there.
do you even remember that?
yeah. I mean, and Liz is she was such a great athlete and she grew up, Joey, my husband who coaches with us and we're quite literally a family, in some ways and um we were so happy when Liz decided to come to Rutgers and it was she wanted to be a part of a team like that. And she knew us from USA field hockey stuff. And I mean, that's just the ultimate compliment, you know. So no, that's amazing, John. And that's what we strive for. I mean, the thing, it's funny that you say that about the high, you know, the family, but it's also really highly competitive. You know, we had our kind of first spring session. It's kind of cool because all the we had a group of players who redshirted freshmen, who were true freshmen, who kind of came in and I mean, they were like, wow, you know, everybody's so good. And they were an amazing group and really it's cool because now we're in our investment season and those guys are going to play loads of minutes. They're going to compete, you know, and the older girls at training yesterday were just like, I need you to push me. I need you to pass the ball as hard as you can to me. I need you to make me better every day. Like, don't be afraid to compete and to push me. I need that from you, you know, and that came at the end of this was our second training of the um, this spring season, and that came out of the second training session from quite a few of the players, and it was just like, yes, like this is what we need, you know, push me, make me better. You can do that because I know we care about each other, and if we care about each other, we're going to make each other the best we can possibly make each other. You know,
Yeah. And
we're gonna push, we're gonna compete, we're gonna get better every day. So, you know, I love that. And it's always been our focus is like build that foundation, build the culture first. We have a great culture where everybody trusts and respects, then we can absolutely compete like, you know, we want to train like we're competing in the Big Ten final. We want to train like we're competing in the national championship. Rutgers has to be the best team that we play every single day.
mhm.
You know, so that's something
You
we
know,
focus on a lot.
to that point, I remember the first time, maybe not the first time, but maybe it was my second or third visit. I went to Carolina. Should I even mention that word among a Terp? But
Okay.
went down to the Tar Heels and I was observing. I was there for Jenny with a lacrosse team, and I was observing Anson Dorrance with the soccer team. And I stood on the sideline and I said to Jenny, I said, "Are they playing for the national championship right now?" And they were. They were in each other's face. They were battling. They were hurt. There were kids bleeding, right? And
Yeah.
you never saw anyone say, "Hey, what's with that? You know, be easy on me. I'm your teammate." No, it was like, bring it. And at the end of practice, they all got in the circle and they all talked about the love they had for each other and the fact that playing that hard against each other was a demonstration of the love. And that's what you're talking about. And that's why coaches need to understand that. We want to push and demand. And when those kids fight each other, as a coach, I want to point out to my team, you know what? I'm glad you bled. I'm glad you fought together like this today. Why? Because that shows how much love you have for each other.
Exactly. And if you create that as a coach, like
Yeah.
they trust me because they know that I care about them and they know that I can push them like that versus if I didn't establish that and I was just making my team go out and beat each other up every day, they might be like, geez, you know, like
Yeah.
what is she doing? I don't know. Is this good? You know, but they know that I care about them. They know that the assistant coaches care about them. They care about each other and they're
Yeah.
willing to do that so that we can be
Hmm.
great.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and the I mean, I think one thing too, we've had some players who are super competitive, right? We had Iris Langens, who was one of the top players in the country and went straight from Rutgers to the Dutch Premier League, which would be like a college soccer player going to the English Premier League, like the top league in the world. And Iris was so competitive, and the standard when you played with Iris was so high. And one of the things I think that's maybe more unique to women's sports is your need to protect players like that because in general, big generalization, men will compete and bleed and kick each other and then it ends. Um, and so as a coach of women's sport, when you have someone like that who is demanding such a high standard, not everyone wants to buy on board and it sometimes affects relationships and you have to be very cognizant of those relationships. When a player like that, or two or three, or hopefully however many, are in your locker room demanding, that pass isn't good enough, that pass isn't hard enough, not always in a nice way, but you realize after the fact, wow, she made me so much better because I could never take a play off. So maybe talk about that because that's sometimes unique for girls coaching and women's coaching is that type of player that you want to clone, and
Oh
yet
my
at the same
gosh.
time, sometimes they drive everyone else crazy.
I mean, no matter what it was, Iris was gonna win, and I love that about her because, that's how I am. And like whatever it is, I want to win. And um, so when we were recruiting her, you just saw that in her and you saw it on the field. And yes, not everybody always responds well because maybe they don't understand. And I think, the team in our program, the relationships matter a lot, and that's something that's really important to the team is, when they feel like maybe something could impact that or jeopardize it, sometimes there's a little bit like, oh, but one thing that we did was just really like get to know each other. Like Iris, what makes Iris tick? Like who is Iris? Why is she this way? And kind of get that out in front of the team. And we worked with John, with you with that. And we also work with a sports psychologist on our campus who sees our team. So we just really wanted the team to get to know each other. Like why do we do what why does each one of us do what we do? How is each one of us motivated? And then like appreciating that because we're all so different. And I think that's what makes playing a team sport so much fun is nobody's the same and everybody brings a little something different. And, you need the Iris player who is going to do whatever it takes for the team to win, and you also need, the players like Carrie Burns, who's a relationship builder and wants everybody to be included and, wants everyone to feel good. And you need all of those pieces in order to have a successful team. So, Iris was great. I mean, she drove standards, she made it competitive, and I think just getting the team to understand her and each other and share each one of our stories. Where did we come from? Why are we the way we are? And appreciate those differences.
Yeah.
Those are conversations that are crucial. You're
Yeah.
saying something that's extremely important that cannot be overlooked. When
Hmm.
you have that, and most coaches will have that circumstance where some players are like being like they'll be called a-holes, right? Because they're just being too rough on me. I'm your sister. You shouldn't be rough on me. But as a coach, you have that conversation. They're going to respect that. They're going to listen, and then you'll change that environment so that when they do start to bleed or they do start to hurt, they know where it's coming from, and you make that. And that's why I love what you just said. That's fantastic.
Yeah. And the team, I mean, is fun. And then everybody, after they get to know each other, and it's like, thank God she's on my team, thank God she's
Yeah,
my
right.
teammate. Like
Jeez, I don't want to play against her. Yeah.
she's gonna go to battle, when we step on the field against whoever it is in the conference, like she is gonna battle them even harder, and I love that about her. So I do think those conversations, Jerry, are so important and understanding where people are coming from and embracing differences and the things that have shaped us. And your story is different than my story, but how do they intersect and how do our stories combine and create this bigger, Rutgers field hockey story? Because we've all had experiences that are different and that make us who we are. And I think that's what makes this special. And I love that as a coach. Like I love getting to know why are players the way they are? What experiences have they had that have made them who they are? Because those differences are so powerful and we have to appreciate them on a team.
And Mayor, like Jerry and I wrote a chapter in our champion teammate book about this, and we call it, petting the dragons, which we
Mhm.
talk about as a team. And we have this little, stuffed dragon or rubber dragon, whatever it is that sits in the
Yeah.
locker room on top of the TV in the front of it. Because, I think this is an important part of the culture that you've built there is if you don't address the fact that there's jealousy or a lack of respect or people not meeting the standards or people being upset, if you don't address that problem when it's little, the dragon grows, right? It gets bigger and then it takes over your locker room. And I think one of the things that you are so good at and the other assistants as well is identifying these and fighting, like address it, getting people to step up and talk about this. And you know what? Sometimes like they're hard conversations and there's tears and there's anger, but then it's like all of a sudden everyone's shoulders drop and they go, thank God, because it was taking over the locker room. And so talk about the importance of that as a coach. Like when you notice something's not working, you can't just stick your head in the sand and hope it goes away.
No, you have to have, I think, be willing to have hard, uncomfortable conversations. And again, I think it goes back to what is your team culture like? How do your players feel like when they are approached? If you create this culture where they feel valued and they feel supported and they feel loved, when you go to have those hard conversations, they're easier in some ways where they're willing to have them with you because they know they can come in here and be honest and be open and not worry, about, I think as a coach, I'm always conscious, like I just, back to your point, Jerry, like I'm going to listen, and I'm going to listen and I'm going to hear you out and I'm going to put myself in your shoes and and we're going to talk through this and find a solution, or figure out how we can move forward. And I think you have to be willing to have those conversations, pet the dragon, to keep your culture, the way you want it too. It's not something that just happens. Culture is something, and you guys know this and you talk about it all the time, but it's something you have to work at. You have to work at it every single day, every single season. Just because last season was successful and great, it doesn't mean it's going to be the same.
Yeah.
It's a whole new group of players. So it's something you have to be willing to have those conversations as a head coach. And there's some coaches that are like, and I know someone like, I don't want to talk to, I don't want to have a conversation. And you'd be so surprised if you just do what happens because you resolve things. It's just sometimes players on my team, and I've found it, they're nervous, they're shy, and maybe you have a different impression of, they're standoffish because they're afraid to have this conversation. It's not because they don't care. It's they just don't know how to talk maybe to you as a head coach. It happens a lot with younger players on my team where they're nervous. And then they come in and we talk, and sometimes we talk about things that have nothing to do with sports, to start. And then they feel comfortable and they feel like, okay, I can come to Meredith for other things or for anything. And then by the time they're seniors, they're just, you've got this incredible relationship and you know each other well. And, sometimes you're friends beyond coaching. Carrie Burns is a great example, and she coaches at a school. And we were just at our coaches convention together, and we've had this amazing relationship, that has developed over years. But it's important to establish that trust and that respect so that you can have those conversations.
Jerry, can I just jump in? Because I think this is a
Please. Yeah.
great time to talk about
Definitely.
establishing these values. And from, 2018, where we started kind of putting them on paper to, I remember when 2023, I came in preseason and by that time they had, the team had decided, okay, we want to use the word Rutgers, right, as our values. And that became the acronym for relentless, united, tenacious, gritty, excellence, respect, and strength. And I mean, I love that. And we spent that session defining what each of those things look like. What do they look like on the field? What do they look like off the field? Um, and I just that season was a really wonderful. I mean, I think we started 15-0, and like, but we kept going back to are we doing this? And I was telling someone, I was telling a group of coaches the other day about those values and why we did that, and then how we sort of encapsulated them in, we need to be more Jersey.
Yeah.
We need people to hate playing against us, that when that game ends, whether they win or lose, they would say, God, I hope we don't play them in the tournament. God, I
Yeah.
don't hope we don't play them again, because that was it. And so this defining values is an ongoing process of what it means for each team. But it's also important to have those on the wall, because if we're not being relentless enough, if we're not being respectful enough, That's what it comes back to. Because if we, these are what we would call championship behaviors. And
Mhm.
if we live these championship behaviors every day and in the investment season and in the summer and all this, that gives us the best chance come the fall.
Absolutely. And I think that's something, and we talk about they're on the wall in the locker room, and the first thing that the team sees when they come in, and they're the words that they see when they leave. And you know that's the foundation, and if we're doing those things well, and that's our character that shines through in everything we do, we're going to be successful, win or lose, we're going to be successful if that's how we're
Yeah.
living our life, and then that's how we're approaching, how we train and how we compete, and going out into the campus community and going to our classes. That's how we live. We're going to be successful. And our goal is really, that's just something as you grow here, it's just who you are. It's who the players are. And when
So
the new players come in, it's just the way we are. You come in and that's just,
And you're
it's
here to be
how
more
we
like
do things.
us.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
This is,
yeah,
you chose Rutgers because this is
yeah.
who you want to be,
Yeah.
and we
Could I
see
put?
these things in you already, but we can't wait to bring them out, and
I want
really
to.
make them shine.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
I
Jerry.
want. I want to put my teacher's hat on for a minute. Take away the podcast, and I know you're in the investment season. So here are my thoughts. First of all, it's amazing that you have those. When John showed me that, I thought that how cool was that? Because I'm a guy without my jacronyms, I call them Jerry acronyms. I don't know if I would remember anything that I'm talking about. So I love this acronym, number one. Uh, what I love even more is the fact that it's on the wall. And what I would love even better is if you go from what I call the wall to the ball,
Love that.
right? And so from the wall to the ball, I think these kids in this season, in this time of year, need to have that expression. And I think what has to happen is as a leader, a coach, I think you need to get their input. How do we get what's one thing that we can do to take relentless off the wall and put it on the ball? What is one thing we can do to take tenacious off the wall and put it on the ball? What's the one thing we could do to take gritty from the wall to the ball? So what they do is they're coming up with the answers. If they don't have the answers, you can supply them. But basically, what we've done with that is gone from doing to being. So once we get off the wall and on the ball, what we're doing is this is the way I can be relentless. And then you can blow the whistle and tell them in the circle, that was an example of relentlessness. Can everybody do that? And so you start coaching to that. And it's all about being, isn't it? It's about, you don't do relentless, you are relentless. You don't be gritty, you are gritty. And so I just need to throw that out there because that's just what I do, you know.
I love that, Jerry. That's our
Yeah.
mantra. I
Yeah.
From
love
the
it
wall to the
so much.
ball.
Wall of the ball.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to, steal John's show. I'm sure he would have come up with that because he knows this too. He hears it all the time and he knows it. So
Yeah.
Um,
yeah.
Well, maybe last piece as we're kind of wrapping up here. We had sort of two recent podcasts that have really stuck with me. Number one, we had Anson on, and he was talking about one of the most important jobs as a coach is to help players' personal narrative align with reality, align with the truth, right? And for kids who grow up in an environment where you're the best, you're the star, you can do whatever you want, and then they get to a place like Rutgers where everyone's fantastic and they're like, oh my gosh, right? And then their parents don't understand why they're not playing, and they don't understand why do I have to redshirt or why do I not play. um, and that's, I think, one of the challenges, right? You have 22, 24 players on your roster. You've got 10 disappointed players every single game who maybe don't get in or whatever. And so then the second podcast I just had was the UVM men's soccer coaches, and talking about this past season and how 28 players, 17 disappointed when every game starts, but how bought in all of them were, with this idea that even though personally I am sad, I wish I was playing, I don't want to let the captains down. I don't want to let the seniors down. And so it's something that you and I always talk about, that those players, that the atmosphere and the focus and the participation from the bench is equally sometimes as important as what's happening on the field. So maybe just we can sort of wrap it up with that, because I think this is something that coaches sometimes choose not to manage.
Yes, and I this season I was so proud and impressed with our bench players. And I will say it's something that we worked really hard on. And I agree with you, John. I think sometimes in the season, coaches are, you're prioritizing your players that are playing and your starting lineup, and that's challenging, and we really made an effort to meet pretty consistently with all of the players who really weren't playing, and really having those conversations with them early and honest conversations. This is where we see you right now, and engaging them as well. I think they have to feel empowered and part of the process, and understand what their path and their development plan is going to be. So we have a development plan for each one of those players, and we met to really check in with them. We spent a lot of time and effort, checking in with them throughout the entire season, where a lot of coaches are like, I don't have time to do that right now, and they're not playing, and we'll do that in maybe the non-traditional season or the spring season. But we found that connecting with them, meeting with them, letting them know where they stood, being really honest with them, encouraging them when they were doing things really well, getting them to buy into, hey, your job right now is to absolutely push the player in front of you in training. Make sure that every single time, you play against Polly, like it feels like she's playing, against the best players in the conference. Like push them, make them better. And those guys were amazing.
Mm,
Amazing. And to have players like that on your bench on the sideline, just cheering and yelling and encouraging and positive versus, you look at benches and it's like, oh, the body
mm,
language and they're mad. And you can see, and I understand. I was in their shoes at one point, where I wasn't on the field, but getting them to understand, how can I impact the team? How can I influence the outcome? How can I help my team win? Because if you have a bench like that, and we talked about this, John, and you challenged the team, to be the best bench in the NCAA. Like,
mm,
can we have the best bench? And I think that's something in our program that I'm incredibly proud of. And, sometimes the young players, I compliment them and I tell them and they think I'm being funny. And I'm like, I'm not. Like,
mm,
I'm absolutely dead serious. You guys helped us win that game. You know how hard it is when you line up, on our side and our team is slamming the bench and it's so loud and they're cheering and the other team has to try to hear their coach. Like, and that's our bench and our team. And I love that about them, but it's a lot of work. And I think it's worth it as a coach to really spend that time, 5 minutes here and there.
mm,
And we kind of had our whole staff. Sometimes we split it up where I take 5 players, Ajay takes 5 players, Phil takes 5 players, but it's worth it, and
Yeah.
it's going to have a positive impact. And all those players want is to feel valued and feel a part of it and to understand that it's going to be them in a season or two on the
mm,
field, you
So
know?
it's from your valuing them, from your making them feel important by empowering them. That's what you were doing. You told them basically, I believe in you, and empowered them, and they felt relevant and
Yes,
respected. From that place, they become selfless.
absolutely.
And what a virtue and what a value to carry out into their young lives of, I've been on a team and I learned selflessness, and that's why they're so attractive now to people in corporations or teaching in organizations or schools or whatever. There's so much to, that you're talking about here. You know, the other thing I want to say is this is the first time, John, that I can recall that usually when we have a coach on, usually I've worked with that coach, right? This is the first time that we've had a coach on that you've worked with.
yeah.
And I want to say that this coach that we're talking with right here, and this is not to blow smoke, is perhaps, maybe I'm exaggerating, but I don't think so. One of the greatest examples of what we teach and what coaching is really, really all about. And I'm so proud of you, John, and so proud of Meredith, the two of you putting your heads together and hearts together, and what a story! What an amazing story to me.
Well, I agree, Jerry. And Mayor, I know you got to wrap up because you have other department meetings here, but yeah, it's been a true honor to work with you. I'm so excited for the year coming up. And I'm going to see you guys pretty soon here for a little visit in February. So we'll kind of give you the last word to sum up, but this podcast has been pure gold.
Oh, I'm just so grateful, and I do wake up every day and sometimes I can't believe this is what I get to do. And, this is it's a job, but it's more than a job. It's a purpose and it's my reason. And I know that's why we're all on this call together because we
Hmm.
share that. And
Hmm.
I'm just so grateful, how our journeys have intersected and, how we're all connected because I think if more coaches thought like we do and valued these things, I think, there'd be more success and more meaning behind what we're doing.
Mm,
It's not just about sports, it's about shaping people and developing people and helping them, maximize their potential and abilities. And it's really special. So I'm grateful to both of you. And this work is so important. And I just am lucky to continue to do it,
mm.
and do it with John and be connected to you as well, Jerry. So thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you, Meredith. You truly epitomize everything that Way of Champions is about. And so we thank you so much for carving out the time today and being on because everyone's going to get a ton out of this.
My pleasure, guys.
Jerry, I think we're both almost a little teary-eyed. That was a pretty incredible conversation, and people I hope can really see what an amazing coach
yeah,
Meredith is.
yeah.
And yeah,
She doesn't have a job.
yeah.
She's never had a job. She has a calling,
Hmm.
and you do as well. And to see the two of you together in the work that you're doing, and I'm sitting back here, you know, uh, thinking, oh my God, this is an example of really what we all need. And I consider her after this conversation, she's kind of a poster child for the Way of Champions uh, message, right?
Hmm.
And you know, she's all about coaching the person. She's really coaching people. She's coaching human beings. She's not coaching the sport. But we're using the sport. You and she are using the sport as a way to develop this. And I know the work you're doing. You shared it with me all the time, every time you come back from the trip there. And I knew from the beginning that you were traveling the path with her, and even no national champions, but you won a Big Ten championship, and but the big championship is these young kids coming out being who they are. And the other point that she made that we all have to remember is this is not like kumbaya.
Yeah.
This is not the touchy-feely love and connection and caring and stuff like that we experienced in the 1960s. This is work. This takes a lot of work. It takes the intention to build character, to build grit, to build fearlessness, and it's work. And a lot of coaches out there are saying, "Yeah, but I've got a coach." No, that's what the coach is. That's what we're saying. Your coaching is that, and we're just going to use the sport as a way to elevate the emotions of people. Because when you get off a field of playing field hockey, you've experienced every emotion in the psychological lexicon, and most people walking around the streets, it would take them a year and a half to experience all those emotions, right, John?
Yeah, totally. And I think, a couple of weeks ago when we talked about Dave Brandt and he talked about his standards and everything, and said, "Man, I'm worried anyone listening to this wouldn't want to come play for me." And you and I are like, "No, that's exactly who I think, the right people." And I think when you have these super high standards in this environment and you put it front and center, and say, this is what you're agreeing to be a part of. These are now the terms and conditions that you signed up for. So don't complain and say it's too hard or whatever. And sometimes when you are at the top level, players realize this isn't for me. And that's okay too, that they're just not going to meet the standard, that they're going to move on. And that's when a coach still can show love and say, let me help you find a place that
Yeah.
maybe you will play more, maybe you'll get what you want out of it.
Hmm.
Because doing something special like, you know, winning a national championship is a really hard thing to do.
Hmm.
Really
Hmm.
hard thing to do. And it takes all the work and all the love and everything and sometimes at the end a good
Yeah.
bounce and a little bit of luck.
Not only is it a hard thing to do, but there's only one national champion. And I can remember the years, especially in field hockey, where Carolina would win, but UConn was probably the better team. They were probably, at another level. But because of the way the game is, the ball bounced a certain way and you won the championship. I think the championship is won right there in practice. The championship is won in your team meetings because ultimately, every team that I've been part of that have won championships, I can absolutely positively say that the championship was these kids growing up and becoming young women or young men to go out there and fight the bigger game, the game of life. And the more you and I can talk like this, I think the more people will hear it, the more will make an impact in changing the world. But uh, I'm really blown away by what she said, and John, please do take credit for a lot of what she's saying. I know that she came from a great family and stuff, but she didn't have a lot of that language and a lot of that direction until you went there.
Well,
And
I think
you
as
know,
coaches, we're always right. One of my favorite quotes is this guy Horst Wien, and he says, stop looking at children as empty vessels needing to be filled. Right? They're full, and you're pulling stuff out. And
oh man, yeah,
100%
yeah,
Meredith,
yeah,
it's all there. It's all in there,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
maybe I help bring some language to it or helped. One of the things we didn't get to talk about is sometimes it's just helpful to have an outside voice, right?
hmm,
Who
hmm,
comes and reinforces. And so a
yep,
lot of the work that we do together, if I'm going to meet with the team, is a conversation. What are you trying to get across? What are the things here that I can reiterate so that um, they go, oh, John's saying it too, right?
hmm,
John sees
hmm,
this as well. And
hmm,
so I think that's important. And I think even if you're a high school coach, you don't have to hire John or Jerry.
yep,
You can have another coach in your program come in and talk to your team and bring out what you need. And, there's always resources in every community to bring an outside voice
yeah.
in to help um, take you to another level.
Yeah, I think don't overlook the fact that the strength of what you just said, which is, you gave them a language. Well, language is thought, and thought equals feeling, and feeling equals behavior and
Hmm.
function.
Hmm.
So they're functioning at a higher level. Why? Because you brought a language to them, and that language permeates their souls. It permeates their hearts and minds. And that language also gives everyone permission to think that way.
Hmm.
Oh, so this is how we're thinking. I never thought of it this way. Great. Now you're thinking this way. From those thoughts come a feeling. How do you feel when you're thinking that way? I feel fantastic. I can't wait. Let's get on the field. And then the action or the function follows. So
Yeah.
never to underestimate as a coach when we bring the wall to the ball and the feelings from the words that we use, we're giving people permission to
Hmm.
play with their mission.
Yeah.
And I'll end with that.
Amen. I mean, between that concept, which, we love, to the attention to the players who aren't contributing, to petting the dragons, to
Oh
helping your
man. Yeah.
most competitive players feel like it's a safe place to compete. I mean,
Yeah.
this was just a wonderful conversation. So
Well,
thanks
re
again to Meredith Civico. Thanks to Sprocket Sports and our Patreon podcast champions. Thanks to you, Jerry, for being part of this conversation because I know you and
Oh,
Meredith haven't really chatted in a while, and
that
so
was such a pleasure just to see her face again. And
yeah,
we haven't chatted in a while and a long time. And uh, yeah, it's good stuff. We're all in
yeah.
this together for
Yeah,
sure.
well, thank you for introducing me to Meredith many years ago and having letting me be part of Rutgers field hockey and also now Rutgers men's soccer, which have been a super important part of my life the last couple of years. And
Yeah.
both teams winning Big Ten championships and stuff. It's been a wonderful journey. And you know what we
Yeah.
learned from Meredith today is she's pretty intentional about her influence,
Oh
and she
my.
thinks about
Uh,
it and
and
wakes up every morning and thinks how she can use it in a good way.
it's all intentional.
It's all intentional. So
Yeah.
everyone, hope you took some good notes there and that you go out and use your influence for good this week, because it's never neutral. And we'll see you again next week, everybody.